Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. Welcome to the Falmouth Wind Turbine Fiasco. And we had a big week for Falmouth this week. We made national news. Our Governor Charlie Baker, was down in Washington this week, and he reported on the Falmouth Wind Turbine project, and Senator called him out on it, and he had to admit to the nation, to the state, to the town of Falmouth and all the citizens that it was a fiasco and it was a screw up, and it was the first time in Massachusetts political history that a governor has actually admitted such a catastrophic mistake. And so today's show, we'll be talking about what the governor had to say this week down in Washington, and how it really affects the individual citizen. Because today we have Barry Funfar with us, and we have Frank Haggerty from Mattapoisett, and Barry Funfar from Falmouth, Massachusetts. And he was the star of the show, you might want to say. He was the expose in the Wall Street Journal this week. And so I'm just going to introduce our guests, and they're going to give a couple minutes of who they are, why they're here today, and then we'll get on with our show. First, I'd like to introduce Barry. Hi, Barry. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Since the turbines have been shut down, I can live in my home again.
Oh, Jesus, I can imagine that must be a big relief.
But we moved here from Fargo, North Dakota in 1978, arriving on Labor Day, and Falmouth was destined to be our roots for my family. I had a 7-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, and you know, we built our own home, drew up our own plans, and this was it. My wife was a teacher. 32 years she taught in between Upper Cape Regional and Falmouth, the Falmouth Public Schools. And I was big into gardening, and that was one of the things that killed me with the wind turbines. Was I both could not work in my gardens, I was driven out, and also my home. In the period that the wind turbines were operating, I spent over 1,000 days away from my home, and it was a fight, and for me it was like, I'm all in, I'm persevering till the end, you know, whatever that end might be. And so many people have told me, like, was it worth it? And for me it was either fight or flight. And if I had left, I would have never been able to forgive myself, and that's really the bottom line.
Well, the citizens of Falmouth have an awful lot of debt to you, Barry, because, you know, what was at stake here is the American dream. Being able to build your home, purchase your home, live in a community without any outside interferences from the government, private industry. We have laws, we have nuisance laws in this country that protect against things like this happening. You must have felt like you were in another country. I mean, you devoted your life to the country. You defended our country. Thank you for your services, by the way. I really appreciate it. You were a Marine, a gunner in the
I was. I spent 19 months in Vietnam in 1968 and 1969, Marine Corps Air Wing.
So you spent your whole life defending the country, doing all the right things. How did you feel about the government, your neighbors, everybody, when all this was going down? Did you feel like you were abandoned? Did you feel like, geez, what was your feeling?
Well, very, very much so what you just said. It's like I had thought of our government as, number one, they protect its citizens from negative influences. And this was certainly a negative influence that chased us out of our own home. It made our own home unlivable. And to me, family was everything. I was a family person. I worked for my family, and that was the bottom line.
I noticed that a lot of the town was split. It was divided in half when all this was going on. And do you think if the people really knew how devastating it really was, do you think they would have rallied behind you sooner? Or do you think that's just human nature?
I know there was, with the climate change situation going on, you know, so much of that in the press, it's like that really took precedence, I felt, over what people cared about myself and my family as an individual. It was like, you know, I had one of our state reps, previous to David Vieira, the one who David Vieira replaced. He actually told me, like, do something for your country, like suck it up, and you know, you can live there with the turbines going on, and but I couldn't, and I very much took that in perhaps a negative way, and I didn't appreciate his comments whatsoever. But I dug in and persevered, and it really was a lesson to my children and my grandchildren. Like, when you want to right a wrong, when something is wrong, you stick by your guns and whatever it takes.
Well, we're so happy and we're so lucky to have you as a Falmouth citizen, Barry. I'm just so proud of you for your perseverance, your determination, your tenacity, because that's what it takes to fight government these days. I mean, whoever thought you'd have to fight your own town hall? From the White House to your town hall, all places in between, it seems like this green energy revolution is really taking its toll on the average citizen. And so with that, I'd like to ask our friend Frank Haggerty from Mattapoisett. You live in Rhode Island now, right, Frank?
Yes.
Yeah. So what was your involvement in this whole thing?
I worked in Falmouth for 10 years, and I was involved with the Bouchard Oil Spill. I was a class representative in that oil spill, which the oil company had to restore all the natural resources in the state. And right after the oil spill in 2003, they attempted to put a wind turbine in my backyard. And the distance in my backyard is approximately the same as Barry's. But at the time, we were aware that the state had these two Vestas 1.65 megawatt turbines in there that they were trying to sell. And what they were trying to do was install a 666 kilowatt turbine behind my house. But knowing that that they had the larger ones in stock, we were pretty well sure that that's what was going to happen. And then when they stopped the attempt to put them in Mattapoisett, they went on to Falmouth to put them here.
Oh, I see. Well, how did you stop them from putting them up in your town?
What we did, we exposed everything that was going on. Like, for example, they would have a meeting and they would say, we're going to put in the 660 kilowatt turbine, and we'd ask a question at a meeting and they'd say, well, you didn't go to the previous meeting, we can't answer that question. So there was they would omit information. They didn't want to give you any information. They wanted to rush through it. And in the course of rushing through it, we became more and more aware that there was something wrong.
So there were two different noises, right?
Yeah, one of the things is in one of the reports, they had, they on page 14 of the wind study that they did for our town, it said that there was two distinct types of noise. One measured in decibels, one measured in human annoyance. Now, we know now today that human annoyance is infrasound, a low-frequency sound. When they went to, after they failed to put them in Mattapoisett because of our group fought them over the big question of what was human annoyance, they came to Falmouth and they dropped the warning of the human annoyance. But instead of putting in human annoyance on the Falmouth Wind 1 study that was done for a 660 kilowatt turbine in the 2005 KEMA study, they put in that a possibility of 99 homes could be affected by the noise rather than human annoyance.
I
So
see.
the study did say that they were aware that there was going to be noise.
So the strategy they used in Mattapoisett, they just
It failed.
brought it to Falmouth
Well, they didn't
and
bring
dropped the
they dropped the human
human
annoyance.
So this was an orchestrated plan that they was bringing around
Well,
the state? or-
the plan they had for Mattapoisett was a boilerplate study they'd been doing all over the state. The Mass Technology Collaborative was stuck with the 2 turbines they couldn't sell. They couldn't sell them at auction. And what they had to do was they had to act, I call it a bribe, they had to give the town of Falmouth $1 million to take Falmouth Wind 1, which is the first turbine. And the town took it with the $1 million because the Mass Technology Collaborative, which is today the Mass Clean Energy Center, couldn't sell them at
Okay,
auction.
just one question for you, Frank. So you mean to tell me 8 years ago, they put them out for bid, nobody would take
Right,
it?
nobody
And they
would.
were brand new,
Right,
and there was absolutely nothing wrong with them, perfect.
right.
So, and the town of Falmouth's going to try to sell them again. They couldn't sell them when they were brand new 8 years ago, and you're trying to tell me they're going to try to sell them again now
Right.
after they've been used? And
Right. And one of the issues with the turbines is that the town has a letter that says that the turbines generate 110 decibels. They're twice as loud as the GE turbine that was going to be installed in Falmouth in the first place. And that letter has never been shown to the public. It's been released through a Freedom of Information Act request, but the people in town, I don't think the residents of the town even know that one individual turbine is twice as loud. So now the town is going to try and sell these 2 turbines that generate 110 decibels.
I see. Well, that's going to be a tough sell, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of like pie in the sky. No one's
Well,
going to buy those.
no one wanted them 10 years ago. So who wants them today?
Okay. Well, that's going to be a tough sell. We'll leave that up to the folks in town. Hopefully they can get someone to purchase these 8-year-old turbines, gear-driven turbines.
Well,
Have the gearboxes been replaced in any of these yet?
one of the private turbines in Falmouth, it's Notice Wind Turbine, had some work done on it about a year ago. They brought in a crane, they took the blades down, and they said they changed the bearing. But the news media was kind of complicit in not reporting news and leaving things out. One of the things I feel is that bringing in that crane is around $150,000 for 3 days, $50,000 for each additional day after that, and then changing a $700,000 gearbox. So these older gearbox-driven turbines have major problems, and they have major maintenance problems.
So it's not really realistic that someone's actually going to buy these. No one's going to buy these, are they?
No one. There aren't any gearbox turbines left today.
They don't even make them anymore,
No.
right? Sort of like the last 2 Yugos on the lot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I always say it's like a 1954 Chevy pickup truck, and they had a guy that was from one of these engineering companies that the town hired for $14,000 that said they can keep them running for another 30 years. And my thing is, you could keep a 1954 Chevy pickup truck running for 30 years, but how much is it going to cost you?
Right, exactly. It just doesn't make any sense economically.
Yeah.
Well, back to you, Barry. Well, we had a big week. You know, the governor had to come out and admit that there's failures, there's serious adverse conditions when you install industrial wind turbines in residential neighborhoods. The east coast of the United States is well populated. It's too populated for these types of machines, and I don't know. You would think that the people who are running the state, the people in the Department of Energy and Environment would have known all this stuff. We found it out by our research. Why do you think the state allowed all this to happen the way it did? I mean, in Boone, North Carolina, back in '87, They realized that the infrasound coming off the blades was too powerful. The same experience was tried in Boone, North Carolina. And what happened? They had to take the 2 turbines down because they were too powerful. They were rattling the dishes and the cupboards of all the people's homes. Everybody in town was going crazy, and they had to take the turbines down. What's different about Falmouth? It's the same experiment, isn't it? Does the same thing happen?
Well, I think unfortunately, because what Frank mentioned about the state having these 2 turbines that they were paying a tremendous monthly storage fee on, someplace in Texas, there was a lot of pressure on the MTA/CEC, Clean Energy Center, to get rid of these, to take them off their hands. And I think this was the avenue by which Falmouth got into trouble. The state offered these turbines, with the state saying that, well, if you don't take them, you better hurry up and take them or somebody else will. And with the financial rewards being shown of just how much money you could make with a wind turbine, it was, I think, a little bit of greed got in there, and it looked almost too good to be true to Falmouth, like, oh, we're going to make all this money. Well, in the meantime, the site that had been approved for a 660 kilowatt turbine, they shoehorn in this 1.65 megawatt turbine, and then in fact, 2 of them, let's double our money. And I think the state was very much responsible for the town making the errors they did in going with these larger turbines. I really believe that if the town had stuck with their 660 kilowatt, it would have been a successful project. It wouldn't have bothered people. There was enough setback. But a 1.65 megawatt is 2.5 times larger than the 660. It makes considerably more noise. You need considerably more setback, and there lies the problem. The town, over 8 years, they tried to make the problem we neighbors. It's like, you know, it's your fault. It's like, get out of here, move, whatever. You know, with threats of eminent domain, we're going to buy you out, and it wasn't easy to live there. Like, we were afraid to put any money into our homes for any improvements, and it was a disaster as far as a quality of lifetime, and it was a difficult time to live in Falmouth for we neighbors of the wind turbines. But so my primary blame, I put it on the state over the town. It's like, what did our town officials know about wind turbines other than what they were told by these experts from the Clean Energy Center? And there lies the problem.
So
I might add that the state's responsibility is also what they call the Project Regulatory Agreement on Falmouth Wind 2. What happened was the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection brokered a deal between the town of Falmouth and the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, and that was to use stimulus money from 2009.
that's the ARRA stimulus money?
And it was money that can't be used if it involves safety or if it hurts anybody. But the town meeting in 2009 voted for what the town meeting members were told was, this is the money you've been heard so much about. And watching that meeting on the videotape, you can see that the town meeting members thought that they were getting money for free. The money wasn't for free. It was what the Project Regulatory Agreement on the stimulus funds for Falmouth Wind 2 required the town to keep Falmouth Wind 2 operating as an energy efficient project. That way it became a grant. If it stopped operating as an energy efficient project, then the town owed the money. which made the town officials keep the turbine going at any cost to these people, to the residents around the turbine, and that way trying to outspend Barry and other people to keep that turbine operating. So the regulatory agreement is one of the big issues.
I see. So the reason that the turbines were stopped had absolutely nothing to do with the governor, nothing to do with any elected official, no one in the state's regulatory boards or agencies, no one stood up for you. Nobody said, you know, this is wrong, this is bad, we've got to do something.
To me, it was a failure of my government.
The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection is stuck in what they call regulatory capture. They have a set of rules and regulations to protect the people of the state, and they have noise regulations. The town knew that the turbines were going to break the noise regulations before they even installed them. They had a study done in 2005 by Kiemer Incorporated that showed a map that showed a circle around the turbines, and it included Barry's neighborhood, that showed that the GE turbine, 1, would break the state noise regulations. The Vestas turbine that they installed was twice as loud as that, and then the second turbine added to that on top of that.
Is there no oversight? Is anybody checking these agencies?
I think what they omitted the information as they went along. They only told town meeting what they needed to know. They left out all the negative information.
And this was right when they combined the Department of Energy and the Department of Environment together into one agency.
Right.
So it sounds to me like the agency's not working.
Right. I mean, even the governor, Governor DeVal Patrick, in 2008 and 2009, he had an email address that was sallyreynolds@statemass.us. And they think that what happened was he used that email address to talk to wind turbine contractors. And that way they'd avoid the Freedom of Information Act requests.
So the government wasn't helping you. They were working against you, really, weren't they?
Well, absolutely. That's my feeling, and that's all the state agencies, including the Department of Health. And what hurts especially to myself is the town Board of Health, Falmouth's own Board of Health, that we had public meetings where there were 47 people claimed adverse effects from the noise and adverse effects from the turbines, and they did nothing.
And didn't they go to the top, the director of the health in the state?
They went, they sent an emergency memo or whatever you'd call it to the state health board, and the word back was, we don't have any money to help you.
Oh my God. Oh, that's just unacceptable, Barry.
Well, it is, but that's how it was, and hopefully that will change or has changed, but as far as I know, it hasn't.
Well, we have an opportunity here to change things, Barry, because the governor admitted to everyone in the country that he screwed up. He screwed up. So my question to you is, if we were going to send a copy of this to the governor, he'll have a copy of this very soon. So my question to you is, what would you like the governor to do? What do you think the governor could do to repair the town of Falmouth, repair the families around the turbines, and the 21 other communities in Massachusetts who are going through the same exact thing that Falmouth, Massachusetts is going through? If you think this is expensive for Falmouth, wait till you get to the bill for the rest of the state. And you're going to have to pick up the tab for that too. So this is very, very vital that the governor does something immediately. So what would you have him do? If you had his ear, what would you say to him?
Well, in my mind, at his recent hearing before Congress, February 6th, I believe that was, just a few days ago, he so much as admitted that, okay, a mistake was made in Falmouth. I didn't read into it that 21 other communities, as we know, are also affected. I mean, that just broadens out the scope of the problem. But I would hope that the state would step up to the plate and at least help the people of Falmouth, where the state led the town into this fiasco, and the state should provide some relief for the town. To myself, it's too much to hope for reimbursement to the neighbors of the turbines. I mean, that would be great, you know. That would give me a whole nother, geez, our government's pretty good, which it's going to take a lot to change my trust and faith in our government. But both from Vietnam and this wind turbine fiasco. But that would be the great start, to help the town of Falmouth and show the people that, hey, our government's here to help as well as to tax the heck out of us.
Well, the governor admitted the mistake. I think he should reimburse all the legal expenses of the people that were affected by it.
Well, that would be a great first step. Whether that'll happen or not, well, you'll have to tune in to the next show, I suppose, to find out how we're making progress. But now the folks in Plymouth, now they're on the heels of the Falmouth folks, and they've been working hard to try to get some sort of resolution for their town. You think this, the admitting of the governor, the state coming out of denial about infrasound and industrial wind turbines, you think these other towns might get some hope?
Well, I think the original plan was to install, believe it or not, 3,300 wind turbines in Massachusetts. And they wanted to get 2,000 megawatts of wind turbine on land by the year 2020. There's only about, it's 2019 now, there's only about 120 megawatts of wind turbines in the state right now on land. So the state more or less has already admitted the mistake with the slowdown of all these installations. If anything gets installed now, it were plans that started back in like 2008, 9, 10, or 12. And there's really no new projects to go. So there's been an admission over and over of all the mistakes they made.
Well, with the problems we're having with onshore wind and how expensive that is, what do you think about the offshore wind?
I personally, what I've read is the huge number of whale deaths, you know, and they think that now that the infrasound is affecting goes through the ocean water out miles and miles, and whales navigate by frequencies. And when there's storms and such as that, they get disorientated and then they end up in deaths. They estimate around, I think there was a recent story by some doctor that 1,000 whales have died in the North Atlantic in the last few years over all these installations of these wind turbines.
Well, that's, we'll keep an eye on that in the future, I'll tell you. Well, Barry, I can't thank you enough for coming in and sharing your experience, strength with the rest of the folks of Massachusetts, and let's hope the governor gets this vital information and then can actually restore the citizens' faith in the Commonwealth, because the Commonwealth has really let its people down, and it deserves to step up to the plate. So well, thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate, Frank, all your hard work in getting the message out in the media. The media hasn't been too friendly with us. Why do you think that is, Frank?
I think they were on board with the renewable energy and the green programs, and it's just the way to go.
So this, you know, Falmouth, we all have the green energy blues here. Now it's all national. Everybody knows that, you know, you just can't site these anywhere. It's sizing and siting is so important in order to keep any of this renewable program going.
Right, I think they had an acoustician write a letter to the town of Falmouth that the setback that they need for one Vestas turbine is 2,923 feet.
Well, we don't have that here in Falmouth, so.
And there's two of them.
Yeah. And there's a private one that's still causing a lot of trouble for a lot of people. And, well, we'll save that for another show. Again, thank you all for tuning in. And, again, thank you for your service, Barry. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And your courage and your tenacity and your determination. I just like to ask the governor to help my good friend Barry. He laid his life on the line for Massachusetts and the nation, and I think it's time, Charlie, that you did something for this wonderful veteran. Thank you, and good night.